Hey guys, Crypto Sunday, and it's the end of the year, so time for a review. We're down slightly this week, about 11,000, sort of few percent, but nothing huge. I think this is sort of end of year, profit taking activity and options and that sort of thing. Nothing sort of to get too bothered about. We've still got the ETF news coming next week, or the week after, of course. So that'll be the thing that decides most of the first few months' action, at least. But yeah, time to sort of see how my portfolio has done for the year. So just looking at some of the coins for the year, you got Bitcoin, basically just sort of steady up. Had a little bit of a sort of quiet period during the summer, but 155% up for the year. And I think a lot of people sort of forget to compare their coins against Bitcoin. I mean, obviously, it's the lowest risk, you would probably say the lowest risk coin on the market. And yeah, people, you'll sort of see people say, well, my coin's up 100% and it's sort of rank 250. And you think, well, you're taking more risk if you're underperforming Bitcoin, then really it's not a failure because it could do something in the future, or it might have done more in previous years, dropped less in the bear market and that sort of thing. But yeah, over sort of more than a year, I would say you want to be outperforming Bitcoin if you're in an altcoin. So yeah, Bitcoin is still sort of has been 60% of my portfolio, is now 50 due to Solana mostly. But yeah, happy sort of having this as the largest position. And with the ETF news coming, I'm expecting this to still be sort of leading the way. Um, as far as the sort of combined portfolio, you still have outliers that'll do a little bit better. But yeah, as far as the sort of big performer, I think that will be it. Whereas Ethereum has been sort of lagging behind slightly. We're sort of expecting good things from that as the network gets used more in a bull market. You start getting more burnt. If we get the Bitcoin ETFs approved, then presume speculation will be continuing about the Ethereum ETFs. They are already in application. So yeah, there's sort of more positive things for Ethereum, I think. Layer 2's sort of providing more, maybe taking business away from the main chain, but sort of growing the ecosystem. So yeah, still pretty happy with that. 91% up for the year. It's under Bitcoin, but that's fine for me. So Solana obviously has been the big performer of the year, but it's important to remember this has come sort of in the last quarter, really. Most of this move is sort of in that last quarter. Beginning of the year, the sort of yearly metrics are pumped up by the fact that it was sort of pretty much at the lows at the beginning of the year, sort of under $10, and then it sort of rose to in sort of mid-20s in January. But from January to October, it was pretty much just sort of in the mid-20s, and then sort of really started going in October. Obviously, a great end to the year, and we don't know where it'll go from here. But yeah, sort of, it's important to remember that it hasn't just been steadily up like Bitcoin, but just more so. It's been volatile. And sort of very well quiet for periods and then volatile. So it could just potentially come back down or sort of underperform the rest of the market in the next year. You can't just expect this to continue, but I'm hopeful. And yeah, obviously 950% for the year. If we'd been going from sort of the 20s, just a couple of weeks after the start of the year, then that would be a lot less, sort of 400-500%. But yeah, Solana's all good. Similar sort of picture for Chainlink, really. Obviously, not quite as much of a return, but yeah, sort of flat for large parts of the year, really. The sort of January to October move, and then sort of really got going in October. This is a bit of a theme with a lot of coins, and yeah, sort of 178% for the year, slightly outperforming Bitcoin, which is all good. Chainlink seems to be doing quite a lot, growing their ecosystem. They have got a couple of newer sort of competitors, Pith, I believe, on the Solana network. So yeah, it's not really had that much competition before, but still think they're sort of the biggest player basically, and should sort of continue to do well. That their sort of service linking everything together is very much needed, and connecting to sort of outside data, which a lot of other chains don't really do. So, yeah, happy to keep holding Chainlink. So Cardano, rather a different chart to the rest, actually 146% up on the year, so just slightly below Bitcoin, but sort of had a beginning of the year rise, and then sort of that January to October time was actually down about 40%, rather than just sort of staying flat and then rising into the bull market. So rather interesting. You sort of take, if you were buying in the lows there, that you've got a reasonable gain. But certainly from sort of if you were buying in the January just after the January rise, then yeah, you'd be up sort of 50%, which isn't ideal compared to the other coins. So yeah, Cardano's still got more to prove. We've seen their figures on DeFi Llama still sort of coming up, and more sort of coming soon, as they always say, but they are starting to actually get some products out, so that's good. So XRP, despite the lawsuit win and the sort of pump that it got off that, has sort of pulled back slightly and is just sort of steadily rising for the year, somewhat similar to Bitcoin, but just on a lesser scale, 81% for the year. So it's about half what Bitcoin has done. It didn't obviously get didn't keep the move up that it got from the lawsuit win, but he's doing okay. Needs more sort of adoption from banks, I guess, and maybe even central bank digital currencies, which none of us really want, but sort of have to expect are coming. But yeah, expecting more from XRP, sort of as they get more accepted and sort of get back on exchanges and that sort of thing. But yeah, underperforming so far. Our ledger, though, is another outperformer, doing very well, 218% for the year. Sort of somewhat similar to Cardano, really. Actually dropped from the sort of January, February pump down to sort of October time, about 25%, but has then sort of risen up very sharply. It's a very small token, 385 million diluted market cap, so just under 200 million current market cap. So it is very small, and you don't really see, they sort of go to a lot of conferences and get their name out there a lot, but yeah, whether sort of it is all actually getting used, there's a lot of pilot programs and that sort of thing, and you don't really see of anyone sort of continuously using the token. But yeah, here are a lot of good things, and they're sort of very active on Twitter and promoting not just their token itself, but the sort of whole clean energy revolution and crypto in general. So yeah, they're a help, and they're outperforming at the moment. Then we have some slightly worse performers. Audius 101%, sort of not done quite as well. Metrics don't really look all that good. The sort of latest users are not really growing how I hoped they would in a bull market, but yeah, I still like the idea. There isn't sort of loads and loads of competition from what I've seen, and yeah, sort of being a Solana-based token, kind of hoping that they can sort of do well and attract more users. They certainly have the TikTok potential still. Don't really see many people using it, but TikTok is big, and yeah, if they get some use, I think they could do well. Obviously not exactly impressing all that much. I mean, 100% is fine, but as I say, 155 on Bitcoin, it would have been better off in Bitcoin. So yeah, needs more next year in 2025. So Polygon or Matic, not the best year, 27%. People will sort of say that it didn't drop quite as severely in the bear market, but it sort of got to 250 or so, dropped down to 40 cents. So yeah, it did drop quite a lot. Certainly at the sort of at the peak, peak to trough, it was big, and then sort of was hanging around 75 cents. So yeah, it's 70 70%, 75%, maybe a little less than the other coins, and it's sort of not really participated in too much of this bull market late in the year. So a little disappointing, but they're still getting a lot of partnerships and sort of users, which I will come back to. Quant is kind of sort of similar to XRP, needs sort of central bank digital currency, it's kind of my hedge against the other coins, really. If the CBDCs do go ahead, then this is one that might get a bit of traction, but yeah, it's a small position, and 30% up for the year, didn't really drop. This is one that actually didn't drop all that much from sort of, at least where I was buying it. I suppose top to bottom it did drop, but yeah, I was sort of buying it towards the lows, and I'm sort of in the green now, but yeah, it's needs to do more. Internet computer has really got going in the last month. You've had sort of even up to mid December, it wasn't really. It was pretty flat on the January pump. It's up on the year because pretty much everything was at sort of the lows right at the beginning of the year. But yeah, from sort of this January to October, where everything was, internet computer was pretty much a January to middle of December, and then has sort of really got going. I haven't seen sort of huge amount of news. There's a little bit of integration with Bitcoin and Ethereum news, but I haven't really seen it getting mentioned outside of their community, so it's not huge use. But yeah, certainly doing well recently. Not something I'd sort of take profits on, because I did buy in the sort of lower period after taking a tax loss. It's still way below my original average, but there you go. So I'll let that one run. Gala, we kind of know, has had a great deal of issues. Even the sort of January pump, it was up to 5 cents or so, and sort of dropped like 75% even from that January pump. So that's the sort of largest drop of any of them this year, and then has sort of risen up a reasonable amount in the last few months, but sort of ends up 90% up for the year. Not great, but they've had legal issues and various things. It's not been an ideal hold, but I am actually in the green, so that's fair enough, but need to do more next year. Basic attention token is sort of kind of a disappointing one, 55%. Sort of users do seem to be going up, but yeah, that doesn't seem to translate all that much into use of the token. It did actually, it's not as if it didn't drop. It dropped sort of nearly 90% top to bottom. The bottom actually being sort of in October, not in the FTX bottom. But yeah, needs to do more. But I do use the product, so I do kind of have a bit of a soft spot for it. And VeChain, just a sort of fairly standard one of the others, did sort of have a fair bit of a pump into February and then sort of dropped back, but October started rising again and is up 125% for the year. So slightly worse than Bitcoin, but a lot better than some of my others. So yeah, that's the sort of group of them. You can see some of the reason for this sort of October, November, December pump in prices for a lot of things. So this is daily active users on Token Terminal. Sort of gives you, you can untick and tick various coins that they have on there. There isn't all of mine, certainly. Cardano, they don't track daily active users, but yeah, it gives you an idea. Sort of, if you take something like Solana, obviously with the last sort of 3 months pump, it's risen up in price. But it's risen up in price off the back of an increase in users. So 333,000, that's sort of in the pretty much at the highs of when the sort of deep in applications were popular, sort of Hive Mapper and Helium sort of minting on properly on Solana. So yeah, it's back up sort of towards the highs. We'll see whether this is a short-term increase in users like it was before, or if it's sort of slightly more sustained. It did seem to be, slowly going up rather than just sort of an instant pump that it had. But yeah, that's Solana looking pretty good. Just sort of looking at Bitcoin daily active users, that kind of just sort of stays largely the same. People aren't really daily active using Bitcoin. It's more of a store of value, but you have the ordinals and that sort of thing. Polygon, sort of say, has been an underperformer, and I guess daily active users are showing it to be an underperformer, although sort of a fairly constant 300,000 user minimum, I would say, is probably more deserving of a better price, even if it isn't rising, because that is sort of largely higher than everyone else, including Solana at the moment. So, yeah, 500,000, pretty good. Ethereum, Polygon is outdoing Ethereum, 368,000, and that's pretty constant all the way across the year, not really rising. So, might be contributing to why Ethereum is underperforming. And then you have sort of the other layer 2s and that sort of thing, and Avalanche, Arbitrum sort of has risen up since the beginning of the year, but just sort of staying fairly flat. You have Coinbase's network, Base, which sort of had an initial pump and then has sort of stayed fairly constant at 70,000, which is good, but yeah, it's nothing like sort of Polygon's usage. So yeah, I'm sort of fairly happy with sort of my ones that are outperforming. Cardano does seem to be getting, I've seen, on other metrics, things like DeFi Llama, it's sort of having more increasing use the last few months at least, where a lot of these are just sort of staying the same level all year. And just to look at hash rate on Bitcoin, that has sort of that's really, really steady increase all year. This is the 7-day average of hash rate, just so it's not a, spiking up and down line. And yeah, it's gone from 250 exahash up to 514, dropped down ever so slightly the last few days, and you can see that is fairly normal. So yeah, doubling in hash rate for the year, and that has pushed difficulty up. Similarly, I put difficulty on the 1 day just because it's it doesn't change for 2 weeks generally, and yeah, that's a similar sort of step up. This makes it very hard for the miners. CleanSpark, sort of my largest position, up to sort of 72 on the difficulty now, or 72 trillion. Yeah, it's a tough old market, but part of the reason I am sort of waiting, hopefully, for the ETF pump in the early months of the year, and if I can actually buy that ETF, then I may make the switch, because if this is just carrying on, then it does make it sort of harder to turn a profit, but good for the network, I suppose. This is, of course, the other thing that's getting touted as giving the miners a helping hand. So you've got transaction fees sort of spiked up in the middle of the year with ordinals, and has sort of had a more sustainable rise over the last sort of couple of months, really. And sort of, you're looking at like 211 Bitcoin in fees, where it was sort of down at low double figures. So yeah, the miners all get a little bit extra out of that, and sort of will be mining profitably, because they're getting more than just the 6.25 block reward. So yeah, there's potential, if this carries on, that they might be okay with the higher hash rate and difficulty, but yeah, I would prefer sort of a more stable rise by just holding Bitcoin itself, rather than sort of the super leverage of betting on this carrying on, basically. Because you have to remember, the holding Bitcoin itself, you have a constant buyer. MicroStrategy does seem to be sort of a constant buyer. I thought, mentioned that when he bought his last load, they were looking to issue more in shares, and they have done so. 615 million. About 600 million, I think they were issuing in shares, and they've bought 14,620 more Bitcoin. This now pushes them to 189,150, and they're well in profit because their average is 31,168. So I obviously he's looking like a genius, and he's going on more talk shows and interviews and that sort of thing. You often see his giant ship behind him. And yeah, I'm not sort of the biggest fan of the way he talks sometimes. He sort of keeps saying it, people were saying you've got, high conviction in Bitcoin, and he says it's not conviction, it's just common sense and sort of rational thinking. And it's, I sort of do watch Francis Hunt, Market Sniper, and was sort of pointing out that he's basically saying if you think of this, he's brought the future forward as a certainty, and now just says it's, if you think rationally, then that is what the only thing you would own, and it's not a certainty. You could even get other coins outperforming it, even if the crypto industry does really well. And he starts sort of comparing it to, like, are you only sitting on one chair and do you only drive one car? And you sort of think that isn't a fair comparison. But yeah, he's good for the industry, I guess, even if he is sort of an unusual figure, just because he's taking even more off the market, and that causes price to increase. So yeah, good news, I suppose. So that's the portfolio for the week and the year. Very nice year. Hoping for sort of a great deal more in 2024 and 2025. So holding steady. We'll be sort of potentially taking profits if we can get to sort of $70,000 Bitcoin. A lot of people have still asked. I'm not really looking to take profits just yet, even on things like Solana, kind of base taking profits on pretty much everything on what the Bitcoin price is, because I would see that as sort of where we are in the cycle, unless things go absolutely crackers. Obviously Solana has done a lot this year, but it did drop a lot, so I'm up 145%. But yeah, unless things sort of go up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of percent sort of in a short period, then I don't think I would. Or unless the fundamentals change, if I'm not seeing price action backed up with sort of real user growth and adoption, then that is when I would maybe start to think about selling. But we'll keep an eye on them all. So leave your thoughts in comments below. How's your year been? And like and subscribe. See you soon.